Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wild Woman Podcast. I have another amazing guest with me today. They're turning up in their droves, which is brilliant. All these wonderful women are finding their way to me. And I just said to someone yesterday, it feels like all the women who are showing up are great teachers to me. It's like everything I need to learn and be reminded of, the next woman who turns up is actually teaching me that. So it's been such a great gift beyond anything. And today I have a lovely lady with me, Fiona Lambe. She's from Monaghan in Ireland, and she is a holistic therapist of all sorts and has so many I suppose, yeah, so many modalities that she uses or works with and has a great story to tell. So, Fiona, hello and welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm great. I'm just going to hand it over to you to start off, just to talk a little bit about, because you do so much. I know you have Reiki and so many other things you do. Maybe to talk a little bit about that, but also what led you to what you're doing now.
So I'm a holistic therapist and coach. So I have been trained in different therapies over the years. And then when I started working for myself, I was mainly doing like reflexology, massage, Reiki, those kind of things. And I found people would open up to you. So, and it was hard to know how to hold that space in the right way. So that's what led me to do training in life coaching and NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. So that really helps me to hold the space for those conversations, because through my own experiences, I've realized that they're both connected. What's going on in your mind is connected to what's going on physically in the body. So you can't, like, people are coming because they're stressed and they want a way to relax, but like they're not necessarily addressing what's stressing them out. They're just looking for nearly the quick fix of the treatment and thinking that's going to reset everything. So I always end up having those conversations with people to try and just lift a few layers off, just help them see from a different perspective. Because even when they speak about it, they get a new perspective on where they're at, or if it's as big a deal or not, or if it's something they actually have control over or not.
Mm.
And then they get much more out of the treatment as a whole then, because they've had that verbal release, and then we do the energetic work. So I just find it's just a really nice combination to be able to just hold the space for both. And also I find like there's a lot of people who aren't ready to open up or don't know where to start, or so they nearly come to me because most of them just book in for treatment, not for the coaching. But it's because they know I do the coaching. Like, I've had a couple of people say that to me, like, I'm just booked in for reflexology, but I booked you because you are a coach. So even in that, it's telling me like they want to talk, but they don't want to be that vulnerable straight off the bat, like by
Yeah.
going directly to a coach or a therapist or whatever. So it just makes
Mm.
more sense for them to come to someone who could do that, but it's not what they're here for, so they can ease themselves into it and see if that is something they want more of or not. So yeah, and like
Mm.
I suppose came to the realization of all of these things working together through my own experiences. Do you know, like I would have went down all the routes, everything that I'm qualified in nearly is stuff I went for in search of to help me on my journey. And so I'm always coming from that place of like, this was never about a job for me or training. Do you know, it was always
Mm.
about like how to help me. Oh, this does work. Okay, I want to be able to do this for other people, because do you know, it feels like why, like I suffered for so long. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh, if I had known about this earlier, if I had tried this earlier. So I'm just like, oh, I want to get to people before they reach the point I reached to. Although
Mm.
sometimes you have to reach that point before you'll seek help. So those
Yeah,
to be there. Yeah.
that's so interesting. I mean, everybody suffers or struggles in some way, but when you
Yeah.
find a way through it yourself, your instinct is nearly, I want to go and help others, and so sort of realizing that, yeah, we sort of have to focus on ourselves first. But can I ask you how you so you said you'd sort of suffered or struggled a lot yourself. Are you open to just talking a little bit about your own life and what led you to finding alternative therapies or different ways of supporting yourself?
Yeah, so when I look back, I realize I suffered with depression most of my life, but it wasn't the language that was used back then. So I didn't know that that's what it was. I just knew that I just had no joy. I had no love for life. I had no reason for anything. Everything was a struggle. Everything felt forced to like live, if that makes sense. And it, over time, then it just got too hard. I became a single mother when I was 21. I just turned 21. So, and that was the best experience, but the hardest experience because I was going through my own stuff. But like without him, I probably wouldn't have had the reason to really try and figure out what was wrong with me. Do you know what I mean? Like I wanted to do it for him, and it's so much easier to do it for other people because I wanted to be the best version of myself for him. So that's what kind of was like, I need to do something about this. Like it's not fair on him more than it's not fair on me. And so then, and I remember going, like, I remember periods of time where I would just do the bare essentials and the rest of the time I would be in bed because it was just, it took so much out of me to just turn up for work, turn up for him, you know. So as soon as it was his bedtime, it was my bedtime because I just didn't have anything else to give.
Gosh, sounds so
And
tough.
yeah, it was. And no one knew really, you know, how bad it was. Like, so
and can you trace, Fiona, do you think, just from your experience, do you sort of trace it back to a sort of a moment or something happening, or how do you look at it? Because I know there's so many views of depression. And to be honest, when you shared that, I think, with me before, it's just coming back to me now when we spoke, you awakened in me that realization that I did too suffer from, you know, they say, I like the word feeling depressed as opposed to sort of categorizing yourself as that is who I am, because when you described how you felt, that's exactly how I felt. And as you said, there's never, you know, it wasn't talked about, and it's sort of, there's been a bit of a stigma, like there is around a lot of things, isn't there, that, oh, you know, there's something majorly wrong with me, when to me, I can understand it now. Can you, you know, I wouldn't say can understand it, like why, can you understand why, or see a thread or something in your life that led to that feeling, those feelings?
I'm not sure if I fully figured out. Like, I think I'm quite a sensitive, empathic person. So I think part of me didn't know how to deal with feeling as much as I was feeling. So I had to shut down because I didn't have the words or the knowledge or the understanding to know how to navigate this, or even realizing like that all of these feelings weren't all mine. Like now I know the difference, but then I didn't. And so I just felt the overwhelm. So, you know, just in general, like, especially, you know, when you're young and you're a teenager, there's all those dramas in schools and with friend groups and everything. And like, or even in different circumstances in the home and stuff that's going on. Like, you know, we moved a lot. And so you're always finding new friends or your new place. And it just, I think all of it I just found really hard because you're constantly feeling like you're in new situations or new, I don't know exactly, but it's just a bit of everything. And then when the pattern I created for myself was like, keep busy. So when I would start a job and then it would all be new. So that would take up so much of my headspace because I'd be learning, meeting new people. And once I became like really familiar that I could go on autopilot in that job, that's when my mind would then creep back in with all the negativity and And I just felt like, oh, I don't like this job anymore. I need to change. Like, it took me I repeated that a lot before I realized, okay, it's not the job. Like, it's not an external reason. It's my, oh, I'm not giving myself space. And it came to that point where, like, I had no energy left, that I couldn't even think about changing job. I knew it wasn't that anymore. And then I'd went to the doctors then, and then straight away they were like, I just knew I wanted to talk to someone. I knew I needed to get to the bottom of it and clear it out and figure it out. Like, I'm a talker anyway, so that's always my way to, like, figure stuff out, just try and talk it through. And I was just told that the waiting list was so long and we have to put you on antidepressants. If you want to go on the waiting list, you have to go on antidepressants, because you could become worse while you wait. But, like, to me, I felt like, I don't see how I could get worse. Like, but they wouldn't. I wouldn't. Like, I was saying, I don't want to go on them, but I was told, well, we can't put you on the list unless you're going to go on them, because you won't. If you're too far gone, it'll be too hard to bring you back. Essentially, I can't remember the wording, but and then so I did go on them until, so it was, I don't know, this is years ago now, so maybe 6 months or 9 months or a year later or something. I don't even think it was a year though, but anyway, went to a CBT therapist, and we just didn't gel. It wasn't a good experience. And so then I just took myself off the antidepressants after that, because I was like, this whole area just doesn't work for me. It just felt like putting a plaster on a massive wound. It was like, this isn't doing anything. Like, so
something in you was able to sense that, because it sounds like you're very vulnerable when you're in that place of feeling so low and not finding, what you need, or, it's not. So, I mean, to be able to, like, at this stage, had you had your son at this stage, or was this before? You had? Okay.
Yeah.
And so what did you do then? So you took yourself off the antidepressants, you said.
And
Now, again, I suppose I'm always conscious of saying this is, this is not advice in any way. This is, this is just people. I really am a big believer. Let everybody share their story. And we're all adults. We have to make decisions for ourselves. There's no one, we're not giving medical advice here, just to be clear.
And some people, it does really work for. I just knew there was, because for me, it numbed everything. So as much as I wasn't feeling the bad as bad, I wasn't feeling the good either. So it just felt like everything just felt numb. And I was like, well, I don't want to feel numb. Like, so, and I did, like, look up and, like, can you come straight off it, or do you have to wean yourself off it? And it was recommended to wean. So I didn't come straight blank. And, I did do a bit of research into how to approach this in a responsible manner, I suppose.
And can you describe, sorry to interrupt you, but can you describe, when you say the numbness, I've heard this from other people, and I felt numb for different reasons. And I had used alcohol for quite a while to numb pain that I felt, emotional pain. So whatever way, whatever anesthetic, I sort of feel, I mean, it isn't a healthy one, but so, how was that in comparison to how you had felt before? Like you're saying, really depressed, I could hardly get out of bed. How do you compare that numb feeling to the really low feelings? Like,
I suppose I still felt low, but not as intensely. But I suppose because I had felt it, I knew it was there, but I just couldn't feel it. Like, so it's not that it wasn't there anymore. It was there. It didn't feel as strong, but the same as, like, the good moments. I knew normally this felt better, where it just didn't feel as good as it normally felt. So it kind of,
you're brought into a middle sort of this,
it just softened everything, good and bad. So the intensity is still there, but you're just not experiencing it to that intensity. But your awareness still knows nothing has changed. But you just don't feel it. I don't know. It's hard.
And so what, it just really, because what strikes me straight away, and I know continue on and tell your
Yeah.
story. But yeah, I'll let you continue on because I just something comes to mind there, but I'll hold it for the moment.
Yeah, and like I hadn't, like, alternative therapies weren't in my world either. It wasn't something, and I worked loads of different retail jobs and all sorts of jobs, and then I was in the bank, and then the crash was happening, and they were, letting people go and all this here. So then I was being let go, and I was just like, okay, I want a whole different change. So I actually went back and did beauty therapy full time, and I have no idea why I chose that direction or what it meant, or like, because I don't go to salons. I'm so low maintenance in that regard. Like, I don't get anything done, or so it just, and even people around me were like, but like, you never wear makeup, you never like have your nails done, or do you know what I mean? It's just, but
Yeah.
anyway,
And you know what strikes me, sorry, when you say it, and I don't know
yeah,
if it's true or not,
yeah,
is something around connection or a personal, this, that in some way as a part of you, because I feel when I felt quite depressed in my life, behind it all was a deep sense of separation from probably myself and others. And I couldn't put words in it. And just when I listen to you, it's like something is crying. I think we crave, like we're part of humanity. We need to feel the sense of connection to ourselves, like our
yeah,
whatever that is for you, your soul, whatever, and to others. And it just when you say that, it's like something is nearly crying out to be, I need to feel some way connected. And I don't know
yeah,
if that even
yeah. And I'd
probably
say when you say
consciously.
that, that's what it turned into. And
Mm,
because then I went to work in salons and was doing that very um obvious beauty stuff, and I didn't enjoy it. And then I started working in spas, and it was more of the massage and facials and all of that kind of stuff, and I preferred it because you were connecting to the person a bit
mm,
more. And so,
mm.
and then I did my Reiki training, and my Reiki master, I remember her saying, like, she was like, oh, I can sense you went a long way around this. Like,
The
those that thought
interesting
of that.
way.
But
You
like,
have to.
yeah, I was just, and I think part of me was so resistant to like a big dramatic change that the long way suited me. Like, I could have went straight for studying Reiki and massage and went straight in, but nearly doing the 2 years full-time beauty and then working in salons and then in spas. And it slowly brought me around to the idea where then it became like, okay, because I'm better than I was, but I was very insecure in who I was and belief in myself that I could be good at these things. So, like, I used to get panic attacks. Like, even, my first massage client, I was nearly ringing in sick that day because I was like, no, I can't do this. Even though I trained and I'd been shown and I knew it, but like, so every step was like really hard for me to take. Um, and
That
even,
sounds important, though. That sounds.
yeah,
I genuinely, a lot of what I have been doing in my life is a bit like that as well, like a stepping stone. And someone might say, well, you could have jumped straight. I don't necessarily think you can sometimes. It depends on each of
yeah,
us. And depending on what we need to, depending on where we've been, what we've faced, what we're feeling about ourselves, like there's a process to it. And I just think
yeah,
it sounds lovely that that
yeah,
just sounds
good,
everything is leading us to the next step,
yeah.
isn't it? That's what I
Because
have found.
everything you gather, like, so many skills or
Mm,
people or experiences in every part of that. So
yes.
I have all of that now that I can now put into, like, each phase taught me something. And even with the panic attacks, like, it was that same Reiki master who was like, do you get panic attacks? And I was like, no. And then she was like, do you ever find it hard to breathe? And yeah, and all. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, all right,
Oh
okay.
yeah. Oh, just that.
Yeah, didn't know
Isn't
that
it
that's
funny how we
possible.
diminish, yeah, like how we dismiss these, these very real. And can
Mm.
I just, I mean, we'll just go through because you've tried, it's just amazing. When I was even reading all the things you do, I was like, my God, like it's like something obviously took lit up in you, and then it just, like, did all of this happen very quickly? You know, the Reiki, then the reflexology, the massage. It's like you.
So when you do the beauty therapy and then you work in salons and spas, like they train you in what they offer.
Okay.
So I got trained in like loads of different massage techniques because all the different brands that I've worked with over the years have the way they want their treatments done.
Okay.
So I'm seeing with facials and that. And then I took on the reflexology myself. And then after that, I did the Reiki. And then I did like, the fertility and pregnancy reflexology and that kind of stuff. And then I did the facial reflexology because some people don't like their feet done. And then when you're working on the head, you can work on the sinuses or migraines or stuff like that more directly. And I just love learning. Like I just can't get enough information. So like I'm always training. Like a year doesn't go past that I'm not adding in some shape or form to it all. And I remember reading somewhere that it was, if you're learning something and you can absorb the information very easily, then you're learning the thing that you're meant to be doing. Or if you
Very good.
really struggle to remember it, it's not for you, because what you're meant to be doing should feel effortless. You just absorb it and you remember it and you know it. And that's what I find with this stuff. Like and even when training in other groups or even in the coaching training, like I'm always really my own worst critic. So I would be surprised when I would do better than other people, and like don't need to be shown something again or just get it. And then people would be like, oh, how can you explain that to me? And I'm like, no, because I don't know how, I just get it. I don't know how to like, that kind of
Yeah.
way. Like, so
Yeah.
because it felt like I know better than you, so I don't know how I got that mark and you didn't. Like, so
And we're all processed differently, don't we? Like, it just
yeah.
sounds, but would you describe there straight away? I just think of, isn't true that what comes naturally. So when you describe when you were younger and the feelings of depression and how you felt, do you feel that that's because there may have been a disconnection from who you are naturally? You know, we're in, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but what you're describing now is it's also natural. You love it, you absorb it easily. I can say that about a lot of the things I love to do now. There's a bit of course, we have to work at certain things, but there's sort of a different, I'm more in tune. It's more who I am. Like, I'm not meant to be an engineer, or I'm not meant to be, you know what I mean? So do you feel that that could be a sort of, that there's some connection there with maybe how you were feeling and sort of
Yeah,
tuning in
probably.
now more to who naturally you are?
Yeah, because this kind of work isn't important when you're at school. Do you know what I mean? It's not what they're training you for or driving you
Exactly.
towards, and so it just felt like in school, I did okay at everything. If I was applied myself, I would have done way better, but I had all of the jobs that, and even when you do all those tests to tell you what you'd be good at, I'm like there was nothing that was driving me forward. There was nothing that I was like, I want to be that, I want to do that. So it just felt very like, oh, I'm just, it. So yeah, I don't think school, and I think it has got better in fairness in being more varied or understanding the different paths. But like, again, so there was no Google back then, or do you know what I mean? So
No.
like you
But
only had what was in front of you or what you could see around you. Like there was no one in my world that did this kind of work, so I didn't see it.
yeah.
And even like back then, like salons and all weren't on the main streets. They were hidden away because people were embarrassed to go to these places, to be
Really?
seen.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
never thought of that. Yeah.
yeah, but they weren't like, because
Mm.
people wanted to pretend they naturally were looked this way, so they didn't want to be seen to be getting waxing done or like any of that stuff done. So they weren't like they are now. So it really wasn't anything that felt like, I just didn't see it, so I didn't know it. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so, and which is was frustrating. Now that I do know, I'm like, oh, if I had known about the stuff back then, who knows where I would be now. But then I wouldn't be who I am now, because it's through everything I've been through that I can hold the space for people. So, you know, there's...
Yeah, totally. I think that's the point. If we even teach this, it is like we keep hearing, life is a journey, but it genuinely is when you start to when I've started to see it in my own life and live that way. There is no place to get to. And I know we keep hearing that all the time, but there isn't, like, because it's in doing it that brings you to the next place, isn't it? Like I think anyone who works in sort of holistic therapy type work, you have to have gone on your own, because how can you, like, can I ask you, so when you were going into, it sounds like the first step, okay, you went and did the beauty therapy, and maybe you had no interest in beauty, but did you find, obviously, women were starting to share things with you?
I remember there was a lady recently enough said that I have a very extractive personality.
A very
extractive personality.
Oh, okay.
So I've been like, because she found herself telling me stuff that she had no intention of telling me, and she was just like, I don't know what it is about you, but like I can't believe I've shared all that. And I would get that a lot, like that.
It's lovely.
Yeah, and it is, and like I want to, and that, as I said, that's why I wanted the coach. I wanted to be able to hold that space in the most respectful way and to help how I can, rather than just being like, oh God, that's awful. Like, do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, like,
So do you
a lot
find
of
that made a big change, that doing that added a big dimension to the work that you do? So
yeah,
you're saying someone might have booked in for Reiki, but because there is always, I trained in Reiki myself, so there's always a talking, be a
yeah,
bit unusual if
element.
you didn't. And I can get exactly what you say. So was it that
Yeah,
then that you wanted, that you felt I need skills to support people?
yeah, because a lot of these people aren't opening up to anyone else. They're not putting it anywhere else, and like, and it did help to just talk, and it does help. But I just wanted to help them to know what to do when they move back into their own world, because otherwise they'd end up just having to come back to me all the time for the Reiki treatment. Do you know what I mean? Where I want
Mm.
to like get you to a place where you have enough tools and understanding that you only need it an odd time, rather than this is something that you need to be doing all of the time because there's no other answer. Your life is like this, so you need this to help you balance. Where it's like, no, you need this to help you balance enough so that you can look at your life and see what needs to change so that you don't need this as much. Do you know?
Yeah, that just seems to me that is something that is deep, that's missing just when you describe that. Okay, what do I need to change?
Yeah.
Or what do I need to discover or heal or learn about myself? Has
Yeah.
that been a big part of what
Yeah,
you're
because I
doing
think
now?
it's what helped me the most is
Mm,
like, you know, doing the energy work and doing, like, I found a good therapist then, and I've been to a few different ones now, and I'm always doing that kind of work on myself. But it was the combination of both, because talking is what your conscious rational mind thinks it knows about the situation. Do you know what I mean? And then, but the energy work is the deeper, the stuff that you don't even know what's going on, and they both help each other, but neither on their own, I don't think, does it fully. um so yeah, it's a bit
mm,
of everything, and everyone is different. Like, for me, I'm the type of person in my life, I need to understand how something works before I buy in. I can't just be told, do this way because that's the best way. I'm like, but why? Because maybe there is a better way. So explain to me
mm.
why you think that, and if I agree, fair enough. If I don't, I'll tweak it and make it better. So I'm just that way. So I think that's how I approach. If that's how your approach externally is, then I think that's how your approach internally should be. So for me, I'm like, I want to figure out, I want to know where these patterns started. And because then it's like something clicks in my brain and is like, oh, okay. So back then you were trying to protect yourself, because all of these things that lead us to feeling unwell started as a protection or a safety mechanism within us. So for me, understanding why I started it helps me to let it
Mm,
go easier.
mm,
Um, but not everyone needs to know that. Some people And that's why I think CBT can work really well for other people, because people just need that mind shift, and that's enough for them. Where my mind just wouldn't shift. It was like, no, I know the other way works. So unless you prove to me that it doesn't, like, so.
So are you finding that with different clients? Like and I suppose I can only say it's my experience, but I sort of assumed, I don't know, that when we're healing or changing or grow, whatever we're doing, that it sort of has to be body mind, that even when now this is just me personally, even like that, if I went to a therapist and talked through it, I could still afterwards feel it's still all in my body. Like I still feel it physically, stress. So you can tell, and I can understand. But my feeling, and I know you do the energy work, is that you have to release a lot of this stored energy that has happened down through the years of various things.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see that?
When you think about it, when we've been, no matter what you go through it, no matter what time, you can't always express how you're feeling and have that release in the moment. So something terrible happens and you feel like crying, or it doesn't feel appropriate, I'll push it down. And then you don't always allow space for it to come back up again. Same with anger. I can't fly off the handle. I can't shout back at my boss. I have to suppress it. And all of these things build up and stay in us. And then, like, I would notice with clients, like, they'd say, oh God, I just hate flying off the handle. I want to feel calmer. And it's like, because you're so full of all of this stuff that any little thing just tips you over the edge. And it's an overreaction to what has happened. It's never in proportion. So that's a clear sign, like, you're carrying way too much. And like, so, and even when people like, oh God, but I feel like I need a good cry, but I don't. Or they have a good cry, but it makes them feel worse. And it's just like, because you're being too attached to it either way. Just cry and stay detached from why you're crying or what it's about. It's just a release. You don't need to go into the stories or try and connect it to anything. And the same with anger. Like, kids, when they're young, express anger by biting, hitting, kicking, and like screaming. But in adults, it's the same. Like, anger is it's a really healthy emotion, because it's telling you when your boundaries are being crossed. And so it needs a physical release. So like, you can go out like running, and that's why exercise so much, because that's a higher energy that you're releasing. It's using that sort of and even screaming into a pillow, or if you're in the car, or so, and then chewing, like, really, things that are hard to chew, like, that is working out that tension in the jaw and in your it's releasing it. So all of these things, it's like, you don't have to be attached to what it is, but if you feel it coming up, find a healthy way to just let it out. Because if you don't, it stays in there till you do, and sometimes it comes out when you don't want it to. So
and when you have that conversation, what you said there, with someone who says, I'm flying off the handle and I really don't want to, or I'm in work, are they able or open to going into, that? Or do you just end up, not say prescribing, saying, well, look, these are some techniques? Or do you ever sort of dig into, I suppose that's the therapy work as well?
You have to be present with what's in front of you. So if there's no set way to, because then if you come in with an idea of like, oh, this is what's wrong, this is my answer to that thing, it's like, no, you just have to stay very much in the present moment, and then what feels right in how to because some people will just shut down straight away, because again, a lot of them are just coming for the therapy, so they're not coming to talk. They don't want to talk, they just want to feel better. And if you try and force them to talk, it just shuts them down even more. So it's understanding what they need in the moment. And even I will sometimes explain things from my perspective. So I'm not asking them any questions. I'm like, oh, that sounds similar to what I've been through, and this is the kind of things that has worked for me. And I always end conversations with like, what resonates will stay with you, and what doesn't will leave. So don't try and remember everything. Don't try and do all of the different things. Just like, if something feels really right or something intrigues you, then play around with it. because I also think like this world is becoming more popular, like the alternative world, but it can start to feel complicated. Like, oh no, you have to meditate every day and do yoga and also get outside for fresh air and like journal and it's just like, oh God, then that becomes another pressure in their lives. And it's just because, and even, you know, people are like, oh, there's no point in walking in this, it's for at least an hour. And they're putting these expectations in, do you know, when it's trying to like really simplify it, like into the smallest possible portion that, and feel excited about it, even like, you know, exercise, for instance, like we all know it's good, but sometimes we hate doing it. But that's because we've told ourselves exercise is a hard, terrible thing to do. So what do you enjoy doing? Oh, I love dancing. Okay, then just dance. Like, do you know what I mean? But then again, then if you turn it into, oh, I have to do my dancing every day, you're ruining it for yourself. Come back to like, I get to dance every day. Oh my God, this is my favorite song. Like, and the same with swimming. Like some people love swimming until they make it a thing they have to do, and then they start to not want to go anymore. So it's noticing how you're talking to yourself about the things that you should do or have to do. You get to do them. Do you want to do them? Like, how do you make it fun? And that's the same with like any of the spiritual stuff. I'm always trying to make it lighter and funner. There is people that are heavier, and some people, you know, you'll be drawn to what suits you, but I'm just like, life is hard and heavy enough. So how do we feel better in an easier, lighter way? Like, you know,
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah,
yeah,
that's lovely. And you know what comes to me just when you keep overall, when you're describing, as you said, even all this alternative world can become so complicated.
yeah,
At the end of the day, we still have to take ownership of ourselves and what resonates with us. That to me, I think is number one. Like exactly what you said,
yeah,
because otherwise you're still handing your power over to someone else to go, okay, tell me all the things I need to do now in this alternative world to
yeah,
feel better. But that
yeah,
still really isn't the answer. It's like,
no,
isn't it a big
yeah,
menu? And like what you describe for yourself, like I just look at you and go, wow, I can see how bubbly and alive and true to yourself you are. And that to me, just seems like, well, look where you've come from, like that. And that was your unique journey. And that's such a beautiful thing to be able to, not say
yeah,
share with people, but it is in one way if that feels right to you.
yeah,
So that whole thing of what resonates, is that a big part of how
yeah.
you
Like
would?
I'm always telling people, check in, always check in
Mm,
with yourself first. And even because a lot of people, especially women, are give too much. Like they don't have as good a boundaries to say no to people, like family and friends or whatever, or you know, it's just harder for us. And I'm sure there's men that find that too, but I just see it more in women. And like I always give them the simple question of like, if I say yes to that, what am I saying no to? And it doesn't matter if you still say yes to it, even just checking in, you're acknowledging what you want to do, how it makes you feel to not do it. So it's kind of, rather than dismissing what your needs and wants are, at least by checking in, it means you're going, okay, you're honoring yourself in a way. And then you will slowly start saying no more, because the more that you do that, the more you're like, no, actually, I really want to say no. So then you'll start saying no. Do you know what I mean? But if you never even check in, you never get to the point, because it feels selfish. You feel guilty for saying no because they really need the help, or they really need. But like, you have to remember, it's not your responsibility. You are your responsibility. And there's nothing selfish about that. The other side of that, once they stop asking, you kind of feel like, oh no, but I'm not needed or wanted or loved anymore. Do you know? But then you find the new dynamic. So it's never an easy process. It's not like all of a sudden you say no and you've all this free time and you feel great. Like there's transitions to it, but it's the same with everything. But overall, you come back out in a more balanced place. Because everything has the two poles, like the two extremes. And when you're trying to change something, you feel both. and then you get back to the middle again in a more healthy way.
Oh, yeah, lovely. And what sort of practical, just even here to share some steps around that, I think that's a huge thing for most people, because we've sort of been conditioned and brought up to this view of, well, you must always do what's right for everybody else and what's good for everybody. And I don't agree with that, because I like what you said. I don't mean being selfish. I mean, when you come from a place that is true to yourself and from your heart, not a really it's a very different energetic place. You're coming from a different place, so that it's very difficult, I think, for most of us as humans, because it's been bred into us in every part. So how do you help people? Have you some practical things that you would say? As you said, it's a process.
Checking in, and it's practicing saying no in the smaller situations, so that you get used to the body response, and you start to see like the fallout isn't as bad. People aren't as annoyed as you thought they might be, and then so you're starting to create the new pattern in your brain that it's okay to say no, because that's all it is. It's a pattern of saying yes, and we're so used to it that the brain doesn't like change. It doesn't like things it can't predict. So if you start changing something, it's like, oh no, everyone's going to hate me and think I'm so selfish, and like I'm not even doing anything else. So like, and so it's just in the smallest little ways it feels comfortable, and then it grows from there. Yeah, it's not drastic. It's not like all of a sudden you have to say no to everyone. Like it's just
it's so interesting when you say that. Exactly, like we assume everybody's waiting for our yes and their world will fall apart. I often have felt that as well. But you said something earlier that really struck me as well, sort of on the same vein, which was about nearly taking on other people's, like, how I feel about it is like it's not up to us to process other people's emotions or feelings for them, which often, if you're quite sensitive, you naturally do, because you feel it so much in your body.
And that's why it's usually more sensitive people that are more prone to saying yes, because they feel like, then they know they will feel it, and they're the people that avoid conflict or anything like that, because the more assured and stronger you become in yourself, you will know, even if there is a fallout, it's not your concern. But checking in with yourself before, if you do it once a day, like literally 10 seconds, nearly do a mini body scan of like, what am I feeling physically, emotionally, like how am I feeling today? Okay, that's how I'm feeling today. So then when you go into the company of other people and you start to feel like completely how you haven't been feeling, and you're like, because I used to just take that on and go, oh God, yeah, today's gone to shit. I feel shit. And then I'm like, actually, this morning I felt great. What happened? Okay, this person that's going through stuff is who I was around. Okay, then it was their stuff. Okay, so come back to like, so it's again.
That's a really good, that's really good advice.
Come back to yourself all of the time. If you check in first, you know where you're at. So after that, like if it's yours or not. But also
do you teach techniques? Sorry, go on, Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, feelings can be changed. A lot of times, like something happens, and then like, the people are like, oh, I've stubbed my toe, now the whole day is gonna be terrible. But like you can then remember a really happy moment and really change it, like, something really funny that happened, and you just take a second to relive it in your mind, and then you've switched. So like people become too attached to something affecting them, rather than I can take control back of this and just decide to feel differently.
Because a lot of
I was just going to say, and if you have your toolkit of memories or things that make you feel, or people or places that make you feel certain ways, so that you're like, oh, I'll open notes on my phone and go into my like things or pictures, or do you know what I mean? You can have like, or if people have send you like kind words, like screenshot them, and just have a place where you have all the things that make you feel really good. So you open your folder and you're like, I'm going into my feel good folder today. Like, because it's
That's a
all
really,
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And do you teach as well or help people like exactly that when you said you do the check-in, that if you're going into a situation, ways that you can sort of, you know, protect yourself in a sense, or you stay in your own body?
It was actually a teacher that taught us this. She was like, put yourself inside a disco ball. So just envision, so because the outside of it is just mirrors, so it's just reflecting back everyone's stuff back to them. So even just setting that intention that like, I'm in here, only good is allowed in, negative will be bounced back. And you'd be surprised at just those little visualizations of things, that the shift it just makes, because it's like telling you, I don't have to take everything else in. And then if you're starting to feel like, oh, this is feels too much, or it's too overwhelming, or I've lost myself, just taking yourself out of the situation, going to the toilet, going outside for a walk, just taking a minute and just going, okay, I let go of everything that's not mine. How am I feeling? Okay. And then, do I need to leave? Is this just like, or you know what I mean? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, you can't leave early, or you know, look bad. Like I don't suit big crowds of people. Like, so a lot of times, even like at a wedding there last year, I think it was, and like I just went out and sat in my car for half an hour because I was like, I just need a minute or a bit longer. Do you know, because I am too sensitive and it is too overwhelming. And especially in those kind of situations, like I don't drink anymore, but like people, it distorts people's energy. Drink, do you know, so as a sensitive person, you feel it even more. Like, and even because I could still wake up feeling hungover if I spend a lot of time at a big event like that, because it's your energy that's drained. That's what a hangover is to me, because like I still get them. Obviously not to the same extent, but yeah, so it's just, like we've lost connection with ourselves because we've been told by society and big corporations that the answer is outside of yourself. Take this or do this, or and it'll all fix. So I'm very much about come back in, notice how you feel, where are you feeling it, what are you feeling, do you know? And the more that we connect back into ourselves, the more we don't need the outside answers, and the more we know, like, oh, it's someone else's energy, or don't, it all comes back to checking in with yourself. And like I'm still working on it. I haven't mastered that myself. I don't know when you get there.
We're always, I think there's always like not it's a test. I do think it's testing because it is sort of a school we're here in this school of earth. It's a fun school. It can be a fun school, but you're always, as soon as nearly you master it, I just feel it's like what you described there. I think it's so, it is exactly that. It's like we've been so conditioned to live from the outside in. And that was my big discovery from cancer, because, and I think, and okay, I sort of feel that's a way you can sort of manage and keep sort of control and keep people operating the way you want in a big, say, world. And maybe that came from a good place. I don't know that it does anymore, but it's like if we allow people, and I think that's really good advice, saying how, you know, living from the inside out, people will often say, well, how do I do that? And exactly as you said, just check into your body. Your body will tell you the truth.
Like I would always ask it, what are you trying to tell me? Like, do you know, because
they'll usually tell you.
Tell you. Like you only end up sick or different things because the outside world, you're not managing it the way you should be. So it slowly, onto, if you're not noticing all the little signs along the way, it then ends up in your body, and then your body's going to go, oh, I'm going to make you stop if you won't stop. And like, you know, that if we get used to checking in, we will catch it a lot sooner. We don't have to have those big illnesses or those big crises points. We can actually go, okay, there's something niggling here. Like I want to do this now. I don't want to wait till it becomes a bigger issue. But I didn't do that. So like,
but I think either did I, but I think that's part of, I would never, even for anyone who's listening and is going through something difficult, this is always, I think, the challenge. I try to be careful even as well. talking about, because it's never about blame and it's never about judgment. That's not at all what I feel. It's exactly the opposite in a way. And it's you've been led to this place through living in a way that maybe is not natural to you or to any of us. So your body is just trying to support you here, and it's very difficult, and it's a very painful sort of way sometimes that we have to be stimulated to change, because it takes discomfort, doesn't it, for us?
Yeah.
If we're nice and comfortable floating along in life, we probably won't change, or we won't grow, and we won't evolve. And I firmly believe that's why we're here, because that's what we're part of. That's what we are. That's what we're made of. It's just constantly expanding. So when you sort of know that, it's natural. Like what you describe, and what you're such an example of, just seeing you, is like, it just seems that's exactly the way you were living. And maybe as a young child, and it's no judgment on your parents or anyone, it's just the way it was, that wasn't really allowed, I suppose, or wasn't encouraged maybe, or understood.
When you think about it, like, it's only just over 100 years ago that we were under occupation in this country. So we had to suppress who we were as Irish people, suppress our language, suppress our culture. So we were trained to suppress everything. And like, so that's a pattern. So it's only now that our generation feels safe enough to unsuppress that and to feel it, because it wasn't safe for generations of us. So I think that's where the shift is happening now, is like, okay, we're safe to now connect back into all of these things, and we're safe to express, and we're not going to be persecuted for it. And like, so we have to understand that that's where it came from. So that's why there's no judgment. Like, they survived. They were in survival mode. Like, my grandparents like grew up with that. So this isn't like that far back. So it's, we're so lucky to now be at this point, like, where we don't have that. But that's why we feel like we've so much work to undo, because like the older generations are able to, like, they've been through it all, so they can be relaxed in who they are to a certain extent. Like, where it's now on us to go, okay, but we can do better. We deserve better. We deserve more. So now we have to push through the boundaries. Like, but they got us here. We wouldn't be here without everything that they did. So it's just.
And would you get a feeling, this is just now a personal thing that I've sort of been experiencing, is this feeling that there is a lot of healing happening right now. I think there's a big shift that's happening on the planet, and there was sort of a shift in consciousness, which is sort of waking people up to this and to other things, but also to the fact that a lot of the things that our ancestors, like you said, bravely went through, that we're sort of, I sort of feel like everything is carried through, and you're, in us, we carry our ancestors. So by clearing a lot of this, we're clearing a lot of those sort of patterns. I suppose they're ancestral patterns that we often say is in our genetics. I feel it shows up in our genetics, but it's carried much deeper in the patterns of our ancestors. I mean, does that come up, or is that something in your work at all, or just the fact that you mentioned it there?
It come up sometimes, but it's not specific, but it comes up in the sense of, like, because people will come and be like, well, my mother did this, or my father did this, or my parents did this, or, and it's just like, yeah, but you're here now, you're an adult now, so you have to take responsibility and understand, like, they were doing the best that they could with what they had. Like, it's not like they decided, oh, I'm going to hold back, I'm not going to love you enough, or I'm not going to be there enough, or I'm not going to, like, they didn't decide that. They give you all they had. So like, helping people to see, because that's what helps you to move on too. Like, because when you're holding on to that, you can't move forward. So you have to kind of take ownership and go, okay, what do you feel like you're missing? What do you need? And how do you give that to yourself? So it's like, because coaching is about what in the present moment is showing up, and it could be from the past, but we're not going into the past to deal with it in the past. We're what is showing up from the past in your present moment. So how do we deal with that now? And we don't have to go deep into understanding all of that, but we just need an awareness around it so that we can make a new decision, because you can't change without awareness. It's only when awareness comes and then you're left with the decision, do I continue what I'm doing or do I do something different now? But until you're made aware of it, you don't even know there's anything to change. So
Yeah, that is
yeah,
a big, isn't it? Because, and I
yeah,
like what you said earlier, you were talking about, you know, the story that we can get. So I found that too in my own life. Often, as you said, with the crying, I just think that's so interesting, because I was at a sort of a drumming, singing circle this weekend, and they sang, and they said often at the end in this big heart song, people will cry. And it sounds exactly like what you're, not exactly like, but this sort of safe space idea, let's say, is so lovely to be, because how they introduced it was, if people do cry, which they may not know the reason, it doesn't matter, it's in your heart, so chances are someone will. And I did, and someone else did. But what was beautiful is they just said, just put a hand, if it's okay with the person beside you, just put a hand on them to know they're not alone, but don't try and interfere with the process, and don't try and stop them, and don't try and solve it, or don't try and find out why. And it actually is the most healing,
yeah,
isn't it? The most
yeah,
healing space. You're witnessed, you're not going into a story about it, you're just releasing. I mean, to me, that is how we're meant to deal with that. And if we need to talk about it separately, absolutely, and unravel, maybe, as you said, the awareness around maybe what triggered it. But do you find sometimes that people don't need to do that, you know, depending on what's going on? If Because you're working on many levels, aren't you? You're working on every level, which is lovely with people, you know, through the
yeah,
mind, through the body, through everything.
yeah. Like it is, yeah, some people like to know and some people are happy to not know. But it's what pattern you've created around when you cry. Like, do you know, I had a lady one time who had been through an awful lot and had never cried. And then she'd came to me, and then she had messaged me a few days later and she was like, I cannot stop crying. Like, please, like, I can't. But I was saying, like, are you allowing yourself to cry or are you making yourself stop every time? And she was like, stop every time. And I was like, make space and just let it out. I was like, this is all the uncried tears that you've held on for this long. So that's all it is. It's not, it's just the release.
Mm.
So it needs to happen. And then once she did that, she felt so much better. So, yeah, can
That's
this happen?
amazing. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
even like another lady who like just felt like she'd lost her voice in, and she wasn't being heard and do that kind of, so that's all the throat chakra. So I was saying to her, just put on your favorite song in the car and sing as loud as you can, because it's a different vibration when you're singing or humming than just talking. And so then she said, oh, she started singing and then she just started crying because it vibrated enough that she got the release in that area that she needed. So it's different for everyone, but it's just knowing that it's okay, and not, once you don't have to attach yourself to it and you get good at that, then you're happy enough
Yeah.
to let cry, because you're just like, oh, this will come and go. Like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think that's such for, again, and I've just often talk about it because, but it's just been such an experience for me, and I've seen it with other people, that the initial fear, exactly what you described, I went through. I didn't cry, or if I did, I stopped myself, and then eventually I went to someone, and that happened. I cried for about a month, and I let myself, and then now it's just become okay. It's not. There's no big backlog, I don't think, still there to the same extent, so it just becomes like a river. Like I that's Yeah,
because
isn't
for
it? It's
me, having been depressed for so long and would have cried so much, and part of me felt like when I started that, oh no, if I start crying, my mind will start going and I'll end up back in that dark place. And it took me so long to get out of it. I don't know if I can put myself through that again. But it's also realizing like that you will never, well, not never, more than likely not be at that same depth again, because you will see it coming. You've learned so many tools along the way that you can reach out to different people or you can try the different things. So for me, I don't think I will ever get back to that, because I've learned too much now that the reason I end up so deep was because I did nothing. I had no tools. I had no idea. I actually had nearly accepted that this was just my life. I wasn't meant to be happy or be okay or, you know,
I know,
have.
isn't it? That's so sad though. Like when you say that, and you're so happy now, I can see. I mean, I'm sure you have your ups and downs like everyone, but to
Yeah,
see you're such living proof of, like, as you said, so you're
yeah,
naturally bubbly, and you said even the way you work with people, which is lovely, because I think that's this whole thing about resonance, which I love that word, is that there's no right or wrong, and even the people we'll find to work with, this doesn't mean someone is not good or good. It's just that's how we're meant to be, isn't it? We're
yeah,
just meant to be. We're all, as you said, different energies, different vibrations, different interests.
yeah. And that's why there's enough. Like, there'll never be too many people doing this kind of work. Like, I'm never afraid of like promoting other people or supporting other people or telling other people where I trained or what I did, because I'm just like, the amount of people in the world that needs it, and we all need a different version of it to suit us. So like, yeah, there's just, yeah, if you believe that you're here to just help, then you will always have enough people to help. Like, it's
Yeah,
there's,
yeah.
because even the people that are given help are going to other people for help. Like, it's not like,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, you're continually. And if you were to I'm just thinking if someone is listening and they are, going through what is like a really dark night of the soul, or really, really struggling, what sort of advice, Fiona, would you give just first off to them, or some maybe practical? Because you said, and I know it's complex to go through exactly how you came through it, because it will be different for everyone.
yeah,
But what maybe would you say to someone who might be in a dark
right.
place? I mean, you've said a
It
lot,
feels,
but you
yeah,
support.
it feels kind of cliche, but like, talking to someone that is not going to judge you. So either go into a therapist or coach or someone professional, or if you have someone in your life that can just hold that space with no judgment. And it's the no judgment that, because if you say something to someone and their face even screws up, then it's just going to shut you down again. So you have to know it's a safe place to put it, because it's always worse in your head than it is when you say it out loud. Even just hearing yourself saying it to someone and then giving you no reaction that this is a terrible thing, or this is so, oh God, that's what's going on with you. Oh yeah, you're fucked. Like, do you know what I mean? That never happens. But we
Mm,
think we do.
mm,
We think our thing is going to be, we are the person that there's no way out for. And like, from my own experience, when I went to therapy, like, I just remember it took a long time, and like, she was the loveliest lady, and she, even like after I first went, she was like, I want you back next week, and if you can't afford it, you don't have to pay it, because you need to come back. I don't want anything to get in the way of that, because she just seen this state I was in at that time. So, and I really appreciate her for that. Now, I always paid, but like, even knowing that if I couldn't, she would be okay with that was like enough to know that it was never about the money, it was the support. And but I remember like each week going, okay, this week I'm going to bring this, and this is the thing that she's going to be like, oh no, okay, I see now why you're not going to be okay. I just kept feeling like, no, she doesn't get it yet. Like, every week she just is like, oh God, yeah, yeah. Do as in like, oh, I've heard that before and know how that feels. I've helped other people with that, whatever it was, in whatever different ways, which just made you feel like, okay, I'm not my own. Other people are feeling this, because that's the problem. And more people do
mm.
talk than they did then. And maybe that's the world I'm in, and which it wasn't then. So it can feel like that for me. But I suppose people that are in where I was then felt like, no one else gets this. No one in my life knows how I'm feeling, and they can't understand it because they haven't experienced what I've experienced. So,
Mm.
because people have a tendency to kind of go, oh, you'll be okay. Or once
Get
this
on
happens,
with it. That's a word. I think it's nearly the most, not say
yeah,
destructive, but getting on
yeah.
with it. It's not
Like,
about
you just
getting
want
on.
to feel validated in how you're feeling.
And
And
then you
like,
can get on with it, but you need to feel
yeah,
what you're feeling, don't you?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I need to be told like, that's okay to feel that. And that's,
Mm.
it's actually really good that you're acknowledging that that's how you're feeling, and not being told like, oh yeah, but like, good night's sleep and you'll feel better. Or if you just, you know, whatever. There's so many different versions of like, but it's, yeah, so just finding someone that's gonna let you be you and feel how you're feeling and say it in a way that allows you to like just get it off your chest, because then you see it more clearly. Like, you know, I remember I had a client, a young girl, and she was saying she, like, you know, we had done a few sessions and she was really struggling to connect with people and have friends. And, you know, so we'd worked a few times together and we had got a good rapport and we were in a good place. So then it was safe for me to say to her, like, why do you think you're extra special? And she was like, why? What do you mean? And I was like, for you to never make any friends would mean you'd have to be a really special person because, like, you know, so do you think you're that special that, like, and then she was just like, oh, okay, yeah, I suppose I'm not. And I was like, exactly. Do you know, it's because sometimes you have to shock the brain, like, out of its pattern of believing. So, and that's all it was doing. It was kind of shocking her enough for her to go, oh, okay, by believing that I'm going to be the only person in the world to never have a friend is just actually not believable. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Say it's
so,
not true. Like I know a coach that I had worked, I trained as a coach, but I didn't really, it sort of helped me, but I haven't gone on to use it in that way. But I worked with another lady recently, and I remember her saying, you know, one of the things she often does, she'll just keep saying, is it true? Particularly around beliefs, is that true? Like, and really
yeah,
digging into it. So,
yeah,
okay, tell me exactly. You're saying you don't have this, and it's just amazing. It's unpicking, isn't it? All
yeah,
of this sort of
yeah.
yeah
Because
wiring
even
and
if someone's
conditioning.
like, yeah, oh, everyone hates me. Well, who's everyone? Everyone at work. Every single person you work with hates you. Well, no. Oh, well, do you know? And so you just keep going at it till they're like, actually, it's just this one person that I don't even like. Do you know? Well, then why do you care? Like, do you know? So it's that all the time. We catastrophize, and I would be guilty of it in my life. And I think that's why I can see it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's that thing of helping people to realize, like, it's actually not to the scale you think it is. And even if it is, we can still find a way through it. Like, do you know,
yeah.
I just don't believe any of us are here to be depressed and miserable for life. Like, and as much as when I was in it, I hated being in it, but now I know I wouldn't be the coach and therapist I am now without having been through it. So now I can be grateful for it. Like, because, you know, I am the other side of it most of the time, like, as we all have our up days and down days and different stuff going on. Like, even with my son, when we were just such a unit for such a long time. And so whenever he then was moving away for college, and that was such a huge shift for me, because it was who, as I said before, like, he was the reason that I did all that got me here, that got me through it. I had to do it for him. So then losing him, from him being my reason to get up every day to get him to school, and like, he was the reason I had a routine, and he was the reason that I did some of the shit jobs I did because I needed to earn. And, you know, so it just was like, oh God, who am I without him and without that role in my life? And like, it's that empty nest syndrome people talk about, but it's so real. And like, I think for me, being a single mother with one child, it was such an extreme all or nothing, where other people might have a few kids, so they're slowly getting used to that. Okay, we've been through this once, it was really hard, but like, okay, we still have another one here. And okay, do you know, and maybe they have a partner and they've discussed, like, okay, once they go away, we'll do this or we'll do that. And, you know, so it just felt like, okay, I have to figure this out by myself. And, but again, it gives me, like, I would have women coming and not even realizing that's what's happening, not even realizing that they don't know what their interests are. They don't know what to do with their free time because they don't know who they are. Like, and it's because they've given their entire life to their family and that routine, and it's now their time, but they don't don't know where to start. So even again, for me, I feel like I'm being there. Okay.
In there, yeah. Well, that's why you probably racked up all those experiences to go, yeah, I've been there. But it
Yeah.
also sounds to me, when you describe your son, as hard as that is, and I don't know, I haven't been through it, but it's
Yeah.
like it feels like, if you look at life this way, I do anyways, that he was sort of sent to you to help you, out of the, as you said, you had to get out of it because he depended on you. And it's like, I don't know, like training wheels coming off a bike. It's like him going, okay, now you're fine, off. He's like him saying it to you. You
Yeah.
can go
Oh,
off,
it
you're
is.
ready to, so I'll leave you and I'll head off and do my thing. So it's
And
lovely in another way to
yeah.
see it
Oh,
like
it is.
that.
And he's very much like that. Like because he is taking over the world in his own way. But he's always like, of course you can do that. Why wouldn't you do it? And and like he very much epitomizes that sense of it. Like it's not just that it's metaphorically like that. He is like he just inspires me every day, and he doesn't see, like I feel like he's the most confident person I know, and like he wouldn't necessarily agree with that, but he just sees like, well, why not? Like if someone else can go for this or do this, or why not me? And he just sees, he doesn't put anyone on pedestals, like anyone but above or below him. He just sees everyone as the same. We're all just people. So he's no fear in approaching anyone for anything, because he's just like, he's just another person. Where so many of us are guilty of like going, oh God, but I couldn't do what they're doing, or I couldn't ask them because, so, and like, so he humbles me in that sense of, again, nearly saying to me, are you that special? Like, you
But
think
that's
that,
amazing. Like it's
yeah,
amazing that, well, firstly, that's obviously a lot down to you as well and how you reared him, but it's just beautiful to see. I sort of feel that as well with a lot of young people now. There is, as you talked about, the generation before us, and then our, my generation, and then there's another generation coming up that probably will, if they have their own issues too to deal with, but they also have maybe grown through what we had to deal with, and maybe that's not an issue for them anymore,
yeah,
but something else might be.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
sort of this evolution, isn't it,
yeah,
from generation to generation. But it
yeah.
also, when
We're all, you don't get through, like, everyone fucks up their kids in some way because you're only ever trying to rest. So I would have joked with that with my son. I'm like, you probably will need therapy at some point because of me, but at the same time,
blame
I'm
my
okay with
parents.
that. Yeah,
Because they can blame their parents and they can
yeah,
blame
exactly.
yeah.
Like it's just part of the process. So, but yeah, like, he's very well rounded and grounded. That we're very close. So it, we could easily have any of these discussions, and I think because it was just the two of us meant we were very close. Like I remember when he was young, and like parents might go, oh, how will we discipline? Where I didn't have someone to ask, so I just asked him, okay, so what do we do here? It's had, and like the punishments he would come up with for himself were always worse than what I would have done. Like, that's a bit harsh. It wasn't that bad. um,
Oh, that's
yeah, so it
brilliant
is.
though.
It's
That's
the
brilliant. And it does, if you were to look back and go, like, with all you've been through, would you change it? Like, would you say, if someone said to you now, okay, you can go back and live it differently, would you live it differently, do you think?
like there were plenty of times I asked that myself that question at the time, and I would have. But now that I've got here, I'm like, no, because I like where I am and what I'm doing and who I am. So if anything had it changed, this wouldn't be it. So I can't imagine anything better. So no, I'm happy. I'm content at the minute. Content, but also always have another vision where I want to go, what I'm trying to like. I'm meeting up with two girls later to try and come up with like group work. The three of us coming together to do like workshops or retreats or different things, because I think there needs to be more community and bringing people together more as well. And
Yeah.
it can start people on the journey of one-to-one work when they come in as a group because they don't feel as vulnerable. You know, and then once
Yes.
they get to know you, they'll be like, oh, she'd be good for me, or, you know, so even that, it's always thinking of what is the next way, what's the next thing we could be doing to engage more
Yeah.
people.
And do you think, like, I feel in my world anyways, it almost nearly shows itself once you get, like you said, very present, you sort of allow yourself to feel. And once you start to feel not just the, we talk about all the crying and the sad stuff,
Yeah,
but then you allow yourself also to feel, like going back nearly full circle to the very beginning of this conversation when you said, and I wanted to come back to that, was just before we finished up, the numbness. So, you weren't feeling, the edge was taken off the really dark stuff, but it was also taken off the really joyful stuff. Like the other side of all of this is like what you described. Then you start to feel really excited about, what's the next great thing I can do? It's, because often we can get lost coming all this healing, which is
yeah,
great.
yeah,
But there's an upside to doing this, because
yeah,
we empty ourselves out to fill ourselves up with good stuff.
yeah,
So I mean, that just strikes me. Do you feel, again, this whole thing about numbing ourselves, because I think we are a very numbed out society because it's got hard for many people. And would
yeah,
you have any message around that? Like, because I just think it's so important. You said it earlier, like we can be afraid of feeling the pain, but in numbing that, we don't feel the
yeah.
joy. Like, how do you sort of navigate or talk to people about that?
Even carving out, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes to feel how I'm feeling, and even journaling it, or like not a, like I don't love writing things down, but sometimes I'll just voice record myself as if I'm talking to someone, because it feels like I'm putting it somewhere, but I might delete it straight away. But I just ramble on, like, and it's because avoiding it doesn't do anything about it, and it feels like it builds to the point where it's like feels too overwhelming to go into it, because you might get stuck in it. So, but you never do. It's actually the resistance to it that makes it persist. So if you just go, okay, I'm going to let my mind go free and just clear whatever's coming up, then you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually okay. I can't believe that's all that was. Avoiding it
Mm.
always makes it feel worse than it actually is. And like that, like then once you've given yourself space for that, straight after that, you're not afraid of the space, so you don't feel like the need to numb, and that's what opens up the good stuff to come in, like you say, because you've let out some of that, and then you're not afraid of it, so you're happy to sit in the space with yourself, and then you're like, oh my god, and like even when you get those little ideas of like, oh god, I'd love to, like, go to the beach for the day and get in the water, or I'd love to like visit this person, or whatever it is, something that just like, or even paint or write a poem or any of those little things. It's like follow those nudges, like that's your soul that's going, this is going to make you feel good. And like, because I had one lady and she was like, oh, my family would think I'm mad if I took off to the beach for the day. I'm like, let them think you're mad, be mad, like, why not?
I love
Because the more authentic you are, like the weirder you are, your weird self, you're giving people permission around them to be that too. Where if you're
that.
stifling who you are, then you're giving out the impression to everyone else, no, we need to stifle, we need to suppress who we really are to fit in. But actually, like, being so, because when you're out and about, you notice the people that stand out and you always admire them for doing that. So that's telling you something. You can be that person for other people. And it's not that you have to have the crazy clothes or the mad hair. It's just, it radiates out of you if you are doing the things that you love to do, no matter how big or small they are. Like, if you,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, like, so yeah, it just, yeah, all those little
Well, you're
things.
definitely that, Fiona.
Yeah.
Which,
Good.
it's just fantastic. It's fantastic to see. It's lovely. I just think it's so important, if it feels right for people, to talk about their own. Like, I'm just blown away, and people, oh, I've no story and I've nothing to tell. And then you listen to people and no idea of the ripple effect it has in the world. Because like you said, then it gives people permission to go, okay, God, she felt like that or he felt like that. And that's all normal. You know, we're sort of believe in our bubble, don't we? That they're, so stop stifling is my big message from what you're saying, and just be present, feel it, release it, don't attach to the story, and stop stifling yourself, you know, because I can only imagine, I'm not saying why you were depressed, but seeing just this beautiful, bubbly soul that you are, that suppressing that could only make someone feel unwell. You know, that's my feeling for any of us. If suppressing that, well, how could we not feel you know? So it's just wonderful to see you doing this for other people now. It's just you being you is enough in itself. So any words you want to finish on, and just where people can make contact with you, because I'm sure they'll want to. So
so as you said, I'm based in Monaghan, and I can do coaching or Reiki at a distance as well. And I'm Fiona Lambe, holistic life coach on Facebook or Instagram. And like, I just feel like my intention is always to empower the person in front of me so that they can be their weird selves. Like,
I love that.
Whatever that looks like. So like, and as I say, hopefully we're going to be organizing some sort of retreats and, you know, doing more things.
Very good.
Around
Would they be in person as well, or online, or both?
Well, we're planning in person at the minute, so we'll see how it unfolds.
Watch this space and keep in touch. So the best way, I'll put it all in the description box and on Spotify, so people can just, then the best way is probably to follow you on Facebook or Instagram, and then from there.
I'm not the greatest on social media, you know, I'm just not one of those people, but I'm working on it. But like, if you message me, I can chat away about anything.
Absolutely. That's, you know, obviously, which is lovely. And I don't think we have to be, and I won't keep going on here, but like, exactly, if it resonates and they'd like to make contact with you, just to reach out. That's lovely. Thanks so much for your time, Fiona, today. I really, really enjoyed it.